Hey guys, this is James from TeaDB. I am bringing you a Inbetweenisode. So today, I am bringing you a question and answers TeaDB Inbetweenisode. A bunch of people contributed some questions, some on Instagram, some on Twitter. I'm going to try to keep this series going, maybe do one every few months. So if you have any questions or anything you'd like answered about tea, or I guess even otherwise, feel free to comment in the comment sections below. Here on Instagram, you can email us tdborg@gmail.com. So anywhere we might see it, I'm going to just collect a bunch of questions, and in a few months I will try to answer some of them if they are hit sort of like the right interests. Okay, so the first question is from Coconut on Instagram, and sorry, I'm looking right past the camera so I could read these questions. And he says, how would you recommend learning more about tea, and specifically pu'erh? There's so much content and it feels overwhelming when trying to get a better understanding of it. I understand the basics, but I see people talking about different villages, areas, and people, and have no idea what they are. Well, I would say for the most part, you should really just take your time, drink the tea, think about it, read about it, etc. A lot of those things will come naturally. If you're interested in specifically some of like the terms or whatever, I'd highly recommend babblecarp.org. There you can just type in the pinyin, so that's just sort of like the romanized Chinese characters for something. So you could type in Mengku, MENGKU, and then it would give you the sort of the Chinese characters as well as sort of the breakdown of where it is. I believe that Lu, who runs BabbleCarp, actually has built in some geographical stuff too. So if you're looking for just sort of like pu'erh terms and stuff like that, that's a good place to go. But really, if you're just thinking about tea, if you're drinking it, if you're drinking with other people, you're listening to multiple sources, like a lot of that stuff will come naturally. Like I remember when I was first getting started and reading places like Marshall's blog, and maybe I got half of it, and half of it I didn't get, or reading Shaw's notes on Badger and Blade, I didn't understand a whole lot of the specific terminologies originally. Then you go back and you read it a year later or something, and a lot more of it makes some sense, and you're able to put a lot more of it together. So there's no need to rush things. The pu'erh will be around in a year. It will be around in 2 years. So I'm not sure if that's great advice, but that is what I am feeling on that subject. So another question from Filmers. It says, in your opinion, what was your most favorite pu'erh from Yunnan Sourcing? That is a good question, because Yunnan Sourcing has a whole lot of teas, and I have tried some of them, but probably not even half of the pu'erhs there. Well, if we're to take price into consideration, I like Scott's Sway Run series. I haven't tasted them side by side, but I've generally liked the samplings I've done of the 2011, the 2013, 2015. His 90s, I think it's 1997, 7581 is also pretty enjoyable. I think the price has gone up a bit since I bought my brick, but I do enjoy that tea. In terms of raw pu'erh, for the price at least, I enjoy some of his Jinggu teas, the Daqing Gushu, the Huangshan. I also enjoy those. I think hover around the $75 to $80 range for a 400-gram cake. Those are good teas, I think, for the price. Oolong Drunk asks, is pu'erh material blending a trend that's here to stay? And that's an interesting question, because pu'erh, as many people know, has sort of shifted and changed, and has been sort of a very dynamic scene, really in the last 20 or 30 years. And for the most part, pu'erh has historically been very much a blend. Even 100 years ago, when in the Haoji area, which is sort of like the really early era of time before the People's Republic of China, and all that, all in World War II essentially, people were still blending back then. They were taking teas mainly from sort of the six famous mountains areas, the greater sort of Mongla County, as well as Yola, and like the tea wasn't being taken from like a single tree or just like one plantation. It was being taken from, for the most part, from multiple places, and it was mixed together. So blending has been around, and of course in the factory eras in the 50s and 60s, and we could get real poor nerdy for a bit, the material was also blended. So big factory teas like Munghai, Shuaguan, those people are known for blending. They still make pretty much all blends. So it's not really necessarily a trend. Yeah, so I guess in some sense the opposite is more of a trend thing where we're going, oh, you know, this is from a single mountain, this is from a single area, etc. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a trend. Will it continue in sort of like the boutique pu'erh market that we're used to as far as like white tea and stuff like that? I don't know. I suspect it would, but you know, it's a really small group, so some of it could just be on the whims of sort of who is selling tea to the Western market. But I think blending for the most part is a good thing, especially if you're looking to age, just because it can sort of add different layers of complexity to it. So you can definitely have good single origin tea, and you can also definitely have really good blends. But if I were to look for something more for the long term, I think looking for a blend is generally a good idea. Okay, so the Cha Dude asks, which sheng do you think is a good and affordable daily drinker? That is also a very open-ended question. So I looked at these questions ahead of time. So I picked out a few vendors here in, that are sort of Western-facing. So a couple that I recommend is Bana Tea Company. They have a 2008 Jingu production. It may not even be called openly as Jingu, but if you go into the description, you'll find it. And I recommend that. I think it's a pretty good price for the dollar. I think it's about $48 or $50 for 250 grams. Yunnan Sourcing has a couple older teas that I like, and I'm sort of recommending the semi-aged teas because they're not super old and won't require a ton of cost. And I tend to not... I don't really like the younger stuff as far as price per dollar is concerned. So if it were for me, I'd be looking at sort of this age range. So they have a 2005 Mengku Zhongshan. It's from, I don't know, it's from one of those Mengku sub areas, and that's pretty good. That has a lot of like darker cocoa nuts and stuff like that. They also have a 2002 Yiwu Ancient Spirit, which has gotten a fair amount of play in the West already. I also enjoy that tea. I'm sure there are some others as well. I haven't sampled from their set recently. From white tea, sort of looking at that age range, I like the 2009 Yiwu quite a bit. I think it's got some really clean aging. It's nothing super, super exciting, but if I was looking for something that, you know, I'm pretty okay with drinking regularly, and the price is for the most part quite good, I think that the 2009 white tea Yiwu is definitely worth the price. So moving along from Tea Fields, is there any interest in the Eastern market, Chinese, Taiwanese, and pu'erh produced by Westerners? That is a good question. To be honest, I don't know. I know they have been historically somewhat interested in selling to the West. Especially pre the bust in 2007, like there was a lot of activity, especially with Hoda, as far as like scheduling events and stuff like that. And I think the bust had a lot to do with sort of like messing with that momentum as far as selling tea to the West. I'm not sure if I would guess that there's probably not a ton of interest in the Eastern market about pu'erh made by Westerners. Someone like Two Dog from White Tea or Scott could probably tell you a little bit better, but I haven't heard much about those teas getting any circulation at all out there, so my guess is no. Jin on Twitter asked about Denny's Inbetweenisodes. Are they coming back? I would say probably not. Why are they not coming back? Because probably Denny doesn't want to do them. So not a great answer, I'm sure, but it is what it is. Jin also asks, what's a really great go-to book on tea? Resource guide, tea identification, what to look for in tea, tasting profiles, etc. Some people like the Camellia sinensis book as far as like a reference book goes. You could look that up on Amazon or something like that. I think it's a fairly popular book. I found it to be, all right. It's not something that I found myself constantly referencing or anything like that, so I got rid of it at some point. My favorite book is related to tea is Pu'erh Ancient Caravans. It's done by a professor who is from Yunnan. It sort of takes an anthropological view of the tea. It's called Ancient Caravans, Urban Chick, something like that. But it's not very expansive, so it's definitely not a reference book. But if you're looking for a really great book on pu'erh that's really interesting, especially if you're interested in pu'erh specifically, then I highly, highly recommend that book. Okay, I think that just about wraps up this Inbetweenisode. Send any questions you have into the email, tdborg@gmail.com, as well as commenting below. I will probably film one of these pretty soon again, and I will see you guys next time.